Hello and welcome to Series 1, Episode 4 of Saturday Morning Nostalgia. The year is still 2010 and we're looking at the last quarter of that year, so October to December, and looking at the products that I bought in that particular quarter. So there's only really two paper magic products that came out then. Scars of Mirrodin on October the 1st, and Premium Deck Series, which was the first one of the Premium Decks, Fire and Lightning. So we'll start off with the Scars of Mirrodin set. This is the first set of the block. It was a large set, 249 cards, so that's 101 commons, 60 uncommons, 53 rares, 15 mythics and 20 basic lands. So if we look at the rares that I pulled, I bought a fat pack for this, and most of the cards we're going to look at came from that fat pack. I did open the odd booster here and there, and I opened one intro pack, so there was, at that point, I think you had one fat pack in those intro packs before they went up to 2. Product was available in 16 card boosters, 6 card boosters, 5 intro packs that were available, and a fat pack, as I've mentioned. The 16 card boosters were actually 15 magic cards, and then the 16th card was either some sort of tips card for the themes or keyword and abilities, or you could get a promo card in that slot. And when I say a promo card, I mean promotional, as in an advert card. And also sometimes you'd have a token card in that 16th slot. So if we look at the rares, we can see on these cards the sort of themes that were in the set. We see Skitherix had Flying and Infect. So one theme of the set was both poison counters and -1/-1 counters. And with the Infect keyword, it says here, this creature deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters and to players in the form of poison counters. The set also had a real strong artifact theme as well, and a large percentage of the cards in the set were actually artifacts. So the keyword abilities that goes with those themes were obviously Infect, as we've seen. Also an ability called Proliferate, which made any counter you had on a card, and that could be either poison counters, or there were other counters as well that were on there, apart from poison counters on players, and also -1/-1 counters. I think we've got a card here like Chimeric Mass had charge counters on it, as did Gridlock, and they were both used to do different things. Hand in hand with the artifact theme, there was a theme of equipment matters, and so you can see Kembakar Regent in the rules box. It's got, at the beginning of your upkeep, put a 2/2 white cat creature token onto the battlefield for each equipment attached to Kembakar Regent. And you'll see other cards at various rarities where there was that sort of equipment matters. The artifact matters theme was reflected in the presence of Metalgraft. So we can see there we've got Indomitable Angel, which has Metalgraft on it. And in this case, it's got artifacts you control have Shroud as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. So you found on different cards there was a different initial clause, but then it always said as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. It's interesting cards like Necrotic Ooze here, and we've got a card like Grand Architect, which gives other blue creatures you control +1/+1. It cares about blue and artifacts as well. You can see there's another ability on there. Single blue, target artifact creature becomes blue until end of turn. And also, interestingly, you can tap and untap blue creature you control, and you can add 2 to your mana pool. but it can only be spent to either cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. Another thing I noticed when I was going through this, I've collected together the foils here regardless of what their rarity is, but some of the artwork lended itself really well to foiling. And the other thing you notice about the foiling is that it makes this watermark stand out. Now the set had a set symbol, but there were also 2 watermarks in the set. The 2 watermarks were this one, which was the watermark for the Mirrodin faction, and then let's see if I can find one with the Phyrexian watermark on it. It's a bit harder to see on this because it's not a foil card, but you can sort of see it's there. Now in this first set, the amount of Phyrexian watermarked cards was lower than the Mirrodin. There was only 40 cards that had the watermark on them. That had the Phyrexian watermark on them. And what actually happened is, in the set, as we move through the set into the next one, and then into the final set, the amount of Phyrexian watermarks actually increased. There are several cycles in the set as well. There was a cycle of replicas. We can see here a foil New Rock replica, which is common. There was a cycle of common replicas. There's also a cycle of common spell bombs as well in here. We had a cycle of dual lands, which enter the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands, and they were allied colours. There was also a Mox in the set, and I was lucky enough to pull one of these. Mox Opal had Metalcraft on it, so you tapped, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool, but you can only activate the ability if you control 3 or more artifacts. There's Metalcraft on that. I was trying to look to see if any of these cards had either proliferate on them or imprint, and they don't. When we come to look at the commons and uncommons, we'll see some of those. I'll highlight them. So I'm just going to look at the player's guide. So there were 3 planeswalkers that were highlighted in the set. We had Venser, which was the only multicoloured card in the set. There was Koth, and there was Elspeth. Now if you remember in the last episode I did, the dual decks I looked at were Elspeth versus Venser, I believe. I think that's right. So we've got the 10 coolest Scars of Mirrodin cards. And then in the back here we've got the encyclopedia. Now one thing I wanted to show you with the encyclopedia, without going through all the cards, was again the presence of signature cards in Magic. So it's something I talked about in the core set when I was going through in an earlier episode. And this idea in Magic, and they did it with Planeswalkers, but I mentioned they'd also done it earlier, and here's an example of a non-Planeswalker where they've done it in this set. So Azuri, Renegade Leader, is a mythic, sorry, not a mythic, is a rare in the set. It's a legendary creature. So if you're not opening much product, you're going to probably not realise that that particular character's in the set. But they've got Azuri's Archer, which is a common, so that gives you a clue. Now one thing they didn't seem to do with this set, I don't see it here, was there were no signature cards for the particular Planeswalkers, or none that sort of jumped out at me. No, I don't see any mention of Elspeth here. But again, another good example. They seem to be promoting more in the set the legendary. So we had Kembakar region, which we looked at a moment ago, where there was a Kemba's Sky Guard at common. Just looking to see if there's any other legendary creatures in the set. Oh, Skitherix, but again there wasn't I don't think there was a Skitherix signature card. Neither was there for Koth. I'm sure there was another green legend in here. Maybe I'm just thinking of, the problem is when I look at this I also tend to think about the original Mirrodin. You can see there's a ton of artifacts in here, and there was a sword in here. There was a cycle, talking about cycles, there was a cycle of Trigons. There was a cycle of Manameres. I mentioned replicas. There was also colour aligned artifact creatures, cycle of those. I mentioned the tap lands, and there was this sort of cycle of vanilla creatures as well, which were very common. So let's have a look through at some of the, talking about commons, some of the commons and uncommons that were in this set. And then after that we'll have a look at the only intro deck that I bought for this. So just looking from above here, you can see that this is the area for the artifacts, and there's a lot more of those than anything else. Okay. So one thing I wanted to just do actually before we do it, let me put that to one side. So this was the artwork for the basic lands. So there were 4 pieces of artwork in the set for each mana. You can see basically the artwork is either spiky or smoggy or both. But there was this really sort of spiky, sharp look to the land artwork. The only other land that was, well, non-basic land that was at common was the Glimmer Post, which was a land locust. When Glimmer Post enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life for each locust on the battlefield. So as we're going through, we'll keep an eye out for proliferate and imprint. As with a lot of sets in Magic, and what you'll notice is with a particular colour, you're going to see things that are very typical for that colour. So, you know, we've got things like in white, damage prevention. There's a card like Arrest, which is, you know, the way white handles dealing with threats is, you know, to one way it can do that is to lock a threat down. So Arrest is very much like a sort of very pacifism-like effect. Here's another card with Metalcraft on it. Not surprising to see Tap Down in white. Another Metalcraft card. Vigilance is something you see in white as well, and on this we've got a spell-like ability attached to it. Conditional flyer here. So you sack it unless you return an artifact you control to its owner's hand. Life gain and flying. There's a vanilla creature. Yeah, there was a cycle of smiths. Here's the Mere Smith. Way we're dealing with both artifacts and enchantments. Something that white does. Way of getting back artifact cards from your graveyard. Pump spell and first strike. A fog spell for up to 2 target creatures. And another cares about equipment card there. And some life gain. And the other thing you'll notice with expansion sets is what they tend to do is they'll take spells that you see in that colour and then add a twist that's relevant to the set. And we should see this in blue. So we've got cards like Bonds of Quicksilver, which, you know, it's another basically lockdown card, but it does have flash on it. But we'll see the sort of thing I'm talking about in a moment. There's another flyer with card draw on it. There's one that specifically counters artifact spells. Another flyer. This one with Metalcraft on it. Vanilla creature there. Something else that blue does, unblockable. There's a couple of cards with that, and again conditional on defending player controlling an artifact. So again, you're sort of blending these things that you see in blue with the theme of the set. There's mill, again with conditions. So whenever Screeching Silkor deals combat damage to a player, and there's several mill cards in Magic that already do that sort of thing, but also if you control 3 or more artifacts, that player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Stoic Rebuttal. So this is caring about controlling 3 or more artifacts. It's a counter spell. So here's a card with Proliferate on it. So whenever Thundering Bird deals damage, combat damage to a player, Proliferate. You choose any number of permanents and or players with counters on them, so that can be any type of counter. And then give them another counter of any kind already there. That includes things obviously like loyalty counters on Planeswalkers. Power toughness switching, granting something flying on Vault Skyward. Another card with Metalcraft. And mind control type effect, although fairly highly costly when you compare it to mind control that you might find in a core set. Moving on to black. So black in this set, very much the home of Infect along with green. So we've got Black Cleave Goblin, also has haste on it. Bleak Cove and Vampires with Metalcraft. So Metalcraft, if you'll notice, seems to be across all the colours. Some horrors in here. Sack Outlet in the form of Drosshopper. Exsanguinate. Flesh Allergy, Flume Spitter. So this is, you know, you'll also see like -1/-1 counters outside of what's attributed to in Infect. Grasp of Darkness. Icarats, more Infect stuff. More -1/-1 counters. Vanilla Creature. Another horror. So here's another Smith. This is Pain Smith. Plague Stinger, very annoying 1/1 flyer with Infect. So one of the problems with Infect and why it's not, you know, always liked by a lot of people is with, you know, in terms of winning Magic, there's a number of ways you can do that. One of which is basically getting someone's life total down to 0. Another way is through poison counters. However, with life totals, you know, you're going from 20 to 0. With poison counters, it's from getting up to 10. So that's why Infect is can be a real pain. Another way of messing around with poison counters. Skin Render, -1/-1 counters, and Tainted Strike. Again, another Infect-based card. Okay, moving on to our reds now, just to get a feel for the set. Okay, Assault Strike. I give something double strike until end of turn. Barrage Ogre. So, you know, of course in red we're seeing very much, you know, direct damage, and also another Metalcraft in this colour as well. You can see many cards having damage attached to them. Also sort of variations on fire breathing. Again with a, you know, synergy going on, or something that relies on the presence of artifacts. So Galvanic Blast is effectively a shock. So single red for a 2 damage, but also it has an extra piece of the rules text here in the form of Metalcraft. Galvanic Blast deals 4 damage to that creature or player. Instead, if you control 3 or more artifacts. We've got Golgotha Rebirth. Generates goblins, and again this business of relating back to artifacts tied in there through the additional sacrifice requirement. Ogre Gear Grabber, Oxida Daredevil, Oxida Smiter. It's another vanilla common. Shatter was in the set. Obviously you need a way of dealing with artifacts in an artifact heavy set. Turn to Slag, way of dealing with equipment. Volshock Heartstoker. In red you often see these like lopsided pump spells where there's it, you know, contributes more to the power than it does the toughness, whereas often in white with some cards you might see the reverse, where it's more toughness than power. But of course in white there's also regular sort of symmetrical pump spells, as there is also in green. Alpha Tyrannex. So we have a dinosaur under the guise of a beast. Another vanilla creature. There's spider in green here, which will another way of dealing with equipment. So Bellowing Tangleworm had Intimidate on it, but also it gave other green creatures Intimidate. Blight Mamba, rather annoying infect creature with Regenerate on it. Blunt the Assault. Okay, another card with Metalcraft. Another card that generates tokens. Again, we're in green here, so we're seeing Infect again. Cispirate Infect on it. We've got a card with Reach. There's the signature Azuri card. Another Smith, Live Smith. So they were a cycle out on common. Moulder Beast. Trample on it. Slice in Twain. A way in green of dealing with artifacts or enchantments. A Scalable Pump spell, X and a green. So with Untamed Might, however much mana you can sink into it, it then gives you the appropriate level of pumping on your creature. Target creature gets XX until end of turn. Protection from artifacts and infect. And then Indestructible. Okay, so let's have a look at the rather large selection of artifacts we had here. So as I mentioned, equipment is a thing in the set. We've got artifact creatures. You can see here with the replicas they have a colour relevant ability on them. Colour dependent ability. More equipment there. Equipment that gives you flying and first strike in the form of bladed pinions. Another artifact creature with Metalcraft attached to it. So here's an imprint spell. So with Clone Shell, it's 5 colourless for a 2/2 artifact creature shapeshifter. Imprint. When Clone Shell enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. Exile 1 face down, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. When Clone Shell is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, turn the exiled card face up. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield under your control. So what's happening is basically you're taking a card amongst those top 4 and imprinting them on this card. and you'll see there are other cards which did a similar thing, but in terms of the imprint, but what they actually how they might achieve that could be sort of slightly different. So I'm just looking at it. It's the first time I've noticed it looks like yeah, it's a misprint. I don't know if you can see that the writing's sort of not there. So now we have the copper mirror here, which is the mana mirrors, or one of them. Culling dice. Yeah, so now we're going to see some artifact creatures with infect. There's just a ton of mirrors, and they weren't just, you know, mana mirrors. They did all sorts of things. There's ones that would generate token. That one was indestructible. There's another cycle, part of the spellbomb cycle, flight spellbomb. Glinthawk Idol, another mana mirror there in the form of gold mirror. Golden Urn. Golems in the set, not surprising in an artifact set. More equipment, more mirrors, even more mirrors. There's Memnite, so it's a 0 for a 1/1. Mirror replica. So there was a cycle of replicas in here as well, which had a colour dependent activation cost on them. More spell bombs. So yeah, it looks like mere tribal is a thing. In fact, I may have gone past it. There is a mere lord that gives other meres 1+1+1. Some more equipment. Well, I pulled a lot of Strider harnesses. And the Silvok Life Staff. It's a popular Pauper sideboard card. There's the Trigons. So with the Trigons, they had this very similar template where Trigon Amending enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. And then there was, as you can see here, if we look at the Trigon of Thought and the Trigon Amending, so there's each one where one of the activation costs was 1 for each colour. And then there was also a generic mana activation cost as well on all the cards. The casting costs were different on the card, but the actual activation costs were the same, converting mana cost. More Trigons and full shot replicas and a wall of Tangle Cord. So I hope that's given you sort of some idea of what the set was really about. What I'm going to do now is just flick through the one intro deck which I actually got for this set. I'm not sure why I just bought one. Normally I buy at least 2 so they can be played against one another, but maybe I just didn't like the other ones in the set. Okay, so the lead card in this was a black green infect deck. Now there were 5 intro packs in this particular set. Mirror of Mirrodin, which is a mono white one. Metalcraft, which was blue red. Dead Spread, which was blue black. Relic Breaker, which was red green. And Phyrexian Poison, which was black green. So this is the Phyrexian Poison deck. There's a foil Putrefax in here, and there's a Hand of the Praetors as the other rare. In fact, to me this looks like an Infect Lord, because it's saying other creatures you control with Infect get +1/+1. Whenever you cast a creature spell with infect, target player gets a poison counter. And so, not surprisingly, the rest of the deck is full of infect creatures, some of which have flying, some of which don't, but have other abilities on them. But also, you've got things like bladed pinions, so you can imagine how annoying it is if you've got a infect creature that doesn't fly and using this to make it fly to get that, basically a creature with infect and evasion on it is pretty annoying. Then we've got some giant growth, so you can do combat tricks, assassinate, relic putrescence, I think that is. Necropede is in this deck. A couple of those. Ica rats, so more infect creatures. Tangle angler. Well, basically it's got lure on it as well. Heavy arbalist. Carrion call puts out 2/1/1 green insect creature tokens. Slice in twain gets rid of artifacts or enchantments. So, obviously the decks are also designed to play against each other well. So, you have some of the other decks had artifacts in them. In fact, they probably all did because there's so much artifact stuff and equipment in here. Having a main decking, artifact destruction is obviously going to be a wise move. And then, of course, there's just the basic lands in here. They haven't done anything clever. There was no mana fixing in this particular deck. And you can see the same artwork that we looked at earlier, basically. Okay, so then we have the stuff from Scars of Mirrodin I wanted to talk about. So that came out on October the 1st of 2010. So the other product that came out was something which formed part of the Premium Deck series. The problem with the Premium Deck series is they only ever did 3 of these. This was the first one. It was a mono red sort of heavy burn, or burn heavy deck, I suppose. So these were $34.99, but they were all foil. There were 60 cards in them. There were actually 6 rare cards, and you got it with a red spin down knife counter. Let's see if I can. Oh yeah, here we are. So the life counter was a translucent one, and let me just see if I can find these cards. Actually had their own set logo, basically, which you can see there. Okay, so the rares were Ball Lightning, Jaya Ballard Task Mage, Hammer of Bogadon, Reverberate, which is I'm trying to think. This is a colour shifted version of a card in blue, which name escapes me. Figure of Destiny. There's a link between Figure of Destiny and ultimately what they ended up doing with levelers. This is a sort of almost like a precursor to level up cards, where you can basically sink mana into this card to basically make it better. And it sort of goes from being a 1/1 for 1 to being a 2/2 by sinking in additional mana, and then a 4/4 for 3 extra mana, and then an 8/8 with flying and first strike for an extra 6 mana. And there's Grim Lavamancer was in here, Mog Fanatic. There's a couple of those. So we're now moving on to our sort of non-rares. So Spark Elemental, a couple of those. Jackal Pup. Let's get that straight. Some Mog flunkies. So you can see here we've got a fairly low curve going on. Cowden Marauders, Hellspark Elemental, Cinder Pyromancer. There's a lot of two of them, one off. There is a playset in here, I think of Lightning Bolt, Keldon Champion, Fire Servant. So basically tops out in terms of creatures at Fire Servant. And then we've got the burn spells here of various forms. We've got Fireball, Chain Lightning. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is a playset of Lightning Bolts. Price of Progress is in here. Thunderbolt, Browbeat, Flames of the Bloodhand, Pillage, which will destroy a target artifact or land and it can't be regenerated. Sudden Impact, Fire Blast, and then there was some non-basic lands, Barbarian Ring, Gitu Encampment, and a Teetering Peaks. Actually, there's a couple of those, I think. Yep. And then we've got the, obviously the mono red basic lands here, and there was quite a wide range of artworks that were used in this particular deck. Now you can see, I don't know how easy that is on camera, as with a lot of the foiling on this is interesting. It's sort of somewhere between regular foiling and the foiling that they use on From the Vaults, and it's actually bending, what would that be, right to left from the top, or left to right from the top, sort of across the card. So yeah, that is one trouble with foils generally, but I've often found with this sort of special foiling and the From the Vaults, the foiling is actually even worse with that foiling. So there we have it. That's just something I thought people would enjoy seeing. So we've got the, like I said, in this part of the year of 2010, in terms of paper product, the two things that came out were the Scars of Mirrodin set, and then that rather nice all foil premium deck series Fire and Lightning. The other thing with this, and again the box wasn't really the right side for sleeves, it did come with this quite nice sort of foil sleeve, albeit cardboard deck box, but another problem with it, of course, again, as with a lot of products around then, a lot of deck boxes they gave, they're just not big enough with sleeves in them. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye for now.